a way that the President of the United States could get elected by popular vote? Yeah, a crazy concept, meaning that the candidate that wins the most votes wins. Because in 2 of the last 6 elections, the winner of the popular vote did not become president. And I'm obviously talking about 2000 and the one we all painfully remember, 2016. So I'm going to tell you about a way we could kind of go around the Electoral College, maybe by the presidential election in 2024. Pero antes de que hablemos about the Electoral College, if you're not subscribed to my channel yet, hit that subscribe button below and remember to turn on the bell so you get notified every time I post a video about US politics, because I love to geek out on what's going on and sharing it with you. So that way you're better informed and less overwhelmed and more eager to get involved. I am Silvia from Tono, Latino, and I am a naturalized citizen. And one of the things that really struck me about the United States political system was when I learned that the president doesn't get elected by winning the popular vote, but by the Electoral College. Perhaps you might be wondering, is there a way to eliminate the Electoral College? Well, not really in a traditional way. That would imply an amendment to the Constitution, which requires the votes of 2/3 of the House, 2/3 of the Senate, and 3/4 of the states. So we know that's not going to happen. Now you're probably thinking, esta vieja está loca. This lady is absolutely crazy because this is absolutely impossible. Pero no, that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. Turns out there's a way to do it, and it's called the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. An absolute mouthful. The National Popular Vote Interstate Compact is an agreement between a group of states and the District of Columbia to award all of their electoral votes to the candidate that wins the national popular vote. Now, give me a thumbs up below if you think this is a good idea and we should eliminate the Electoral College, and don't forget to subscribe. But before I tell you all about the National Popular Vote Interstate Compact, I want to make sure that you totally understand how the Electoral College works. The Electoral College is a group of people who help elect the president and the vice president of the United States. There are currently 538 electors. So to win the election via the Electoral College, a candidate would have to win more than half of those votes, right? And that magical number is 270, because that's 538 divided by 2 plus 1 to make sure there's a majority. Now, how do these states get electoral votes? That all has to do with the population. Every time the census happens, which is every 10 years, a state can gain or lose electoral votes. The latest census was in 2020. The state with the most electoral votes is California with 54. So if your candidate wins in California, they take all 54 electoral votes with them. That's exactly a fifth of the way to the magical 270. In all states except Maine and Nebraska, we have this winner-take-all system where all of the state's electoral votes go to the candidate with the most votes statewide. But that sounds kind of crazy, doesn't it? That means that in 48 states, even if a candidate won with 51% of the votes, they take 100% of the Electoral College votes for that state. The 6 states with the most electors are California, Texas, Florida, New York, Illinois, and Pennsylvania. If a candidate wins in these 6 states, they get a total of 190 electoral votes. Remember, they only need 270. And because I love geeking into this, let's get a little bit more specific with some examples using the 2 biggest prizes in the Electoral College, California and Texas. California has 54 electoral votes, Texas has 40. There are over 22 million registered voters in California, and there are about 17 million registered voters in Texas. Let's hope those numbers are actually bigger now. Using the same turnout percentages that we saw in 2020, 80% of the voters in California decide to vote in one election. This means 17.6 million people will vote. Now, using a similar split to what we saw in the 2020 presidential election, where Biden got 64% of the California vote and Trump got 35%, then in an imaginary election, 11 million people will cast votes for the Democratic candidate and 6.6 million people will vote in California for the Republican candidate. So again, in this imaginary scenario, the Democratic candidate takes away those 54 electoral votes because they won. Now, using the same turnout percentages we saw in 2020 in Texas, 67% of Texas registered voters cast a ballot in the election. That means we have about 11.3 million people voting. But the split of the vote was a lot closer in Texas. Trump got 52% of the vote and Biden got 47%. Using that as an example, the Republican candidate in this imaginary election gets 6 million votes. The Democratic candidate gets 5.3 million votes. So even though there's a difference of about only 700,000 votes, the Republican candidate takes all 40 electoral votes for the state of Texas. But let's get back to what we want to know. How do we eliminate the Electoral College? I mentioned earlier that doing so in the traditional way is honestly out of the question. But there's another way. The National Popular Vote. Interstate Compact is an agreement between a group of states and the District of Columbia to award all of their electoral votes to the candidate who wins the National Popular Vote. We are 72% of the way to the 270 votes needed for a candidate to win the election. Visit nationalpopularvote.com. The link is in the description below. That way you can check if your state is already one of those that committed to the National Popular Vote, or if you need to contact your legislators and let them know that you want them to pass National Popular Vote legislation. National Popular Vote Interstate Compact. Get rid of the Electoral College. It is possible. Not in the traditional way, but in this National Popular Vote Interstate Compact way.